John wakes up aboard the ship Odysseus 1, which is heading to Titan. Captain Frank meets him and asks him to clean up as soon as possible. A new message has come from Earth. Na Pai wants them to check the equipment and go back to bed. There are 2 cycles left to Jupiter's orbit, where they will conduct a gravitational maneuver. Dash is measuring the sensors, they're all fine. They also have to take a psychological test, and asks what John misses the most. And even though Zoe's moments fly by before his eyes, he calls the wind. John doesn't understand why he can't remember Zoe's last name. Nash thinks it's because of the cycle in hibernation. Buddy, don't worry about it. John continues servicing the ship and remembers the day he met Zoya. Then I called her last name Morgan. After completing the maintenance, the team records a message for Earth and falls back into sleep. Before falling asleep, John sees the day when Zoe watched the presentation of the expedition to Titan. The main goal of the mission is to find resources that are important for the planet there, because climate change calls into question the survival of all mankind. After a while, John wakes up again. At first, everything was completely normal until he started hearing Zoe's voice. John. Coming to the sound, John sees nothing. At the same moment, the ship began to shake violently. The panel begins to wobble. John tries to reach her, but the panel falls sharply, knocks John out. Nish and Frank are very interested in what happened here since they were sleeping at that time. John explains everything he saw. After checking the technical room, Joe sees a broken pipe and a huge dent. The strangest thing is that everything is completely normal on the cameras. The ship's critical systems are also functioning normally, as if nothing had happened. Faranka gives the order to record a message for Earth and describe what happened. When he was on the ground, Zoya came up to him. She helped pass the level, and John said that due to the fact that he has no family, he was able to decide on a future flight. The Earth's response video was not received. This is very strange, since the connection works fine. Frank decides to continue the expedition. Nash is afraid that the dent is very dangerous. Suddenly the whole system has failed, and shows normal indicators. Although in reality everything is different. Frank prefers to believe the data from the ship, and tries to reassure Nash. What if the structural impact was the cause of the problems? We need to check this and wait for Earth's message. A little later, Nash approaches John. He is convinced that continuing the mission will kill them all. To hell with Titan. We need to abort the mission. Computers and lights restart, although the devices do not see a power surge. Frank interrupts their reasoning. He hints that if they return to Earth, and the engineers do not find the problem, they will have very big problems. This did not prevent Nash from coming up with a plan to reduce sleep in order to wake up before Franco and turn the ship back. John is against it. Then Nash says that he used to work in Antarctica. One day a small crack appeared, but no one paid any attention to it. Every day the crack was getting closer and closer to the base. The workers began to evacuate, but the boss took out his weapon and threatened to eliminate anyone who wanted to escape. John is ready to help Nash, but on condition that they find a malfunction. When he wakes up, he sees Zoya, and he tells Nash about it. This scares Nash. We're going home. You will meet for real. After looking at Jupiter, John abruptly gets stuck, and he no longer wants to return to Earth. A dispute begins. Frank enters the bridge. He orders Nash back to work, and when he refuses, Frank whispers something in his ear, which causes Nash to leave. And John offers to drink his signature alcohol. Nash is freaking out more and more. Frank asks John if they can accelerate without Nash's participation. John answers yes, because the data is already on the computer, and as soon as communication with the database is established, he will report in detail about his insubordination. Going out into the corridor, John sees that the panel is taped. He crawls back into the technical compartment. The dent begins to hiss and breaks out into space, taking John with him. However, this was just a guess in his head. Frank announces preparations for acceleration. Nash once again asks not to help him, but John does not want to listen to him. After reaching the desired orbit, acceleration turns on. Surprisingly, everything went well. It worked. Brilliant. To celebrate, Frank gives everyone his drink. A little later, John checks the receiver and hears a strange noise. He is called by name in a loud voice. John. John runs to the team. who says they didn't use these devices. Perhaps it was an echo, but this device works in the range of 110 kilometers. There must be something huge or something very close. Radar doesn't see anything for 1,500 kilometers, which means John has another vision. After the next climb, Zoya stood opposite John. He begins to walk in circles, convincing himself of hallucinations, but is interrupted by Frank. Nash has found something in the reactor. The power is gradually increasing, little by little, but if this continues, they will have big problems. If the reactor shuts down, there won't be enough solar panels to keep the ship flying. That's not what John is interested in. How does the captain know about Zoe's introductions? After all, John only told this to Nash. Nash doesn't remember it, although he may have said it. Due to hibernation, his brain has erased almost all the information. He doesn't even remember the parent. Nash begins to groan as if he is an animal and once again offers to return to Earth. John orders silence, as Nash told him about the calculations of the reactor if the tablets are turned off. The captain calls the threshold to himself. The ship's power has decreased by 20%. Apparently, someone gave a low-level command under the reactor system, which caused the power deviation. So I heard that the cat belongs to John. He replies that he did not drive. Frank pulls out a gun. They have to go into hibernation while he solves all the problems. Before falling asleep, John sees Frank attacking Nash and eliminating him. After a while, John wakes up and tries to find Nash, but he is nowhere to be found. Franco says he knocked Nash out because he was too unstable. Maybe soon John won't be able to control himself either. Then Frank adds that Nash's story was practically true. It was the captain who suggested that the team escape, but they were too scared, which is why he left alone and died. The shots that were found on the bodies of people were made by Nash. I am very glad that we have agreed with you. John goes back to work. Today, the pain in his arm turned into a full-fledged mutation, but even that was only in John's head. Frank sees John's depressed state and decides to tell the truth. Their relationship with Zoe was unreal. She's a decoy. The admissions committee wanted to make sure that John was willing to do anything to fulfill the mission. John does not believe him. Then Frank describes their first meeting and all subsequent dates. How did John not find it strange that he saw Zoya in front of his house during a morning jog? When Zoya lived in the opposite part of the city, John doesn't understand how he can know all this, to which Frank replies that he was from the admissions committee. When John returned to the warehouse, one of the radios picked up a signal. John tells the Earth everything that happens to them. Frank calls him in and asks just one question. What did he just do? John answers, has established contact with the Earth. Then why is he talking to himself on the recordings? John doesn't want to go to sleep anymore. The substances they are driving break his brain, and he closes himself behind the door, asking to show where Nash is now. Frank promises to do it, but as soon as the door opens, he attacks John. I have to shoot you. A brawl begins, from which John emerges victorious. After entering the bridge, he tries to find Nash with the help of cameras, but all to no avail. The computer replies that Nash is on the bridge, although only John and the sleeping Frank are on the bridge. Then John requests a list of the crew, which consists of only one person. It turns out that John's consciousness was divided into 3 personalities. John returns to the walkie-talkies. Zoya answers him. He can't be sure she's real, but he talks about other astronauts anyway. Zoya explains that it happened because of an erroneous dose of medications. John did not fly anywhere. This is an experiment before the actual start of the expedition. All that John saw was a simulation, and the dent was due to an earthquake, since the training center is located underground. All that's left is to exit through the airlock. Frank appears. He tries to convince John that Zoya's conversation is another hallucination. Are you going to open the airlock? Open the door, and you will be thrown into outer space. But John decides to return home, telling Zoya that he loves her. There was a dilapidated base outside, and when John approached the lamp, he remembered a conversation with Zoe, where they discussed moths and their desire to fly into the light in search of safety. John realized how much he had made a mistake, but it was too late. This is where the film comes to an end, but we will be glad to have your like. Bye.